This is The Resilient Life, where we believe that every human will struggle in this life. Our challenge is to struggle well. I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war, my mom to cancer, and I'm the daughter of a retired Marine. I'm also a wife, mom, author, and president of one of the nation's leading veteran service organizations. Join me and some incredible guests as we explore the value of struggling well through life's inevitable challenges. Okay, well, I am really excited for today's guest on the Resilient Life podcast. Joining us today is Gary Sinise of the Gary Sinise Foundation, incredible veteran service organization, and also most fondly known as Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ryan. Good to be with you.
Yeah, so I have to start with a story. My dad is a retired colonel in the Marine Corps, and when Forrest Gump came out, I clearly remember my parents saying, we're going to go see this movie together as a family. So it was myself, my brother, my mom and dad. My dad was stationed at the Pentagon at the time. And, the movie was being talked about from the first person that saw it. You knew it was going to be an iconic movie, and my dad brought the entire family. We went and watched that movie, and it was probably one of the first times that my parents brought us to, I would say, more like an adult movie, right? And a movie that wasn't geared towards us, but a movie they felt that was important for us to see. And I remember feeling, pretty changed from watching that movie. Even being a military child, I didn't have full grasp or understanding of service members and some of the hardships that they went through. And I remember watching that movie and just feeling differently about my role as a military child and the role that my dad was in as a Marine Corps officer. And so I want to thank you for your contribution to that incredible film that I have since passed down to my children to say, you need to watch this movie. It's an important movie that, it's an important movie to our country, and you need to see it. And then, I want to thank you for, I was looking back, and I shared this with you before we hopped on. You actually coming full circle, that was in 94, I think, when Forrest Gump came out. Is that correct?
Yes,
and
indeed.
then we lost Travis in 2007 in Iraq, and started the Travis Manion Foundation. And when we were growing and maturing, we said, we really have to do a video about the work that we're doing here. And somebody in passing had said, well, it's always great to have like a voiceover or somebody as with celebrity status kind of sharing the work you're doing. And I remember my dad saying, like, wouldn't it be great if we could get Gary Sinise? And lo and behold, you volunteered your time. I was able to fly out to LA on the set with you, and I think there were like fake cadaver bodies on the side as you were recording your.
I remember. I have this picture. We set it all up over here on the side of the sound stage, and
it was such a incredible experience for me because. We were certainly struggling those first couple years after losing Travis. And when we started to come to this point where we were feeling very purposeful in what we were doing in his name, and then to have someone like you come on and, really give us some gravitas to our work. It was a big deal. We debuted that video and it was like, whoa, Gary Sinise is speaking on behalf of the Travis Manion Foundation. So I don't know if I ever properly thanked you for how impactful and important that 5-minute video was. And, again, I looked at it today before I joined you. I'm like, I got to go back and watch that video. A lot of the things you talked about still ring true to the work we're doing today. So So I thank you for that.
Well, like I said, you have to send that to me.
I will certainly do that.
It's a good memory, and I'm I was of course humbled and honored and grateful that I could support what you were working on and what you were building in Travis's name. It's important stuff, these nonprofits that are in this space helping in various areas. I mean, just consider the veteran space without all the nonprofits that are out there that are helping across the country in multiple areas. If you took all those nonprofits away, I mean, just imagine the catastrophe we'd have in the veteran space. I mean, it's hard enough, for veterans to get the support they need and everything if they're just relying on the government. And we can't be relying on the government. We have to take charge and try to do something. And when someone like you, a family like yours, has a loss like that, and you take that loss and you turn it into something positive that will help other people in Travis's name, you honor his legacy and you honor his service, and you continue to serve yourself. So for me, it was a no-brainer to be able to step forward and help you.
Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things that I love about everything that you represent is that, you gladly stepped forward to help us spread the word of the work that we're doing. And, you've talked a lot about the role that you played as Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump, but I don't know a better way to say this, but you kind of put your money where your mouth is. Like, you got in the weeds, you got in the dirt, you started the Gary Sinise Foundation, and you're joining right alongside all of these incredible organizations with your own, doing incredible work. And so I'd love to know let's start at the beginning, because I've heard you talk about this before, but I want to make sure that everybody hears the story of kind of how you were so affected and what playing that role did for you. Of course, you come from a military background yourself. There's definitely some great service in your lineage, but you've talked before about how transformational that role was and how it shaped kind of what you did next in your life. So just walk us down that a little bit and share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think, Ryan, the Lieutenant Dan part was I don't know. Remember, Lieutenant Dan talks about his destiny, and he makes a big thing about following his family's footsteps of all this service. And you remember the funny little shot in the movie where you see his Revolutionary War relative, and then his Civil War, and then the World War I, and then World War II, all these relatives, and his family line and his destiny was to, either be a great military leader and to go on, have a superb military career, a long career. Lieutenant Dan wanted a military career. That's what he wanted to do. Or he was going to die honorably in battle alongside his fellow service members. And what happens to him, of course, is that Forrest pulls him out of that and saves his life. And he's resentful because he's very, very guilty about what happened that day. He's the lieutenant in charge of his platoon, and he walks him into an ambush, and a bunch of guys get killed and a bunch of guys get hurt. And he doesn't feel that he deserves to go on. And so he's very resentful and bitter and angry. And of course, it's all happening within the context of the Vietnam War, which was a time when, many of my, family members served and were, came back to a nation that was totally divided over whether that service was honorable or not. And so many of them, our Vietnam veterans, just went into the shadows. And it was a very, very difficult time for our services. And Lieutenant Dan, of course, is a guy who's not only living with his injuries and his post-traumatic stress and his guilt, but he's living within a time where the nation turned its back on our veterans. But what I love about that story, and it's a short little story if you look at it, it's only probably 10, 20 minutes of the movie, these little sections, but it's so positive and it's so unique in terms of what happened to our Vietnam veterans. And it was something new with regards to the movie business and Vietnam veterans at the time it came out in 1994. Prior to that, if you look at the movies that came out about Vietnam veterans, Casualties of War, Apocalypse Now, Platoon, you name it, Deer Hunter. You look at these films that had come out, Coming Home, and you always had the feeling that the veteran was just not going to be all right at the end of the film. Right. They were struggling and they were suffering and they were really dealing with a lot of bad stuff. And they, were they going to be able to carry on with their lives? And Forrest Gump comes along, and what happens to Lieutenant Dan? He's angry, he's mad, he's living by himself, he's mad at everything. But in the end, he's standing up again on new legs. He's a wealthy businessman. He's married and he's pushing forward with his life. And it's a positive ending to a story that we want for every single service member coming back from war. So I think it really resonated. And it certainly became a story that I could carry into the hospitals with me when I was going to talk to our new generation of Lieutenant Dans. And so many of them would want to talk about that story. And so many of them deserve and want that ending. They're wounded, they're broken, but they want to know that they're going to move forward and be okay. And that's the cool thing about that movie.
Absolutely. And I know, one of the things that I had pointed out is one of the scenes in that movie where Lieutenant Dan's back home, he's in the wheelchair at New Year's Eve. And, kind of everything's happening around him. Everyone's enjoying themselves and, but he's not like super present in that moment. And, you think about that and a lot of those images, a lot of those things that those themes that are brought up around Lieutenant Dan are just, like you said, they're just so focal to what's happening here today. And making sure I just actually interviewed Gary Sinise, an incredible Marine that was injured in Afghanistan, lost her leg, and a lot of other terrible injuries that she suffered. And we had a whole conversation, not around her physical injuries, but her mental injuries. And on her 1 year anniversary of her injury, she tried to kill herself. And she's doing incredible today. She's an incredible advocate, and she's come full circle. But it's those invisible wounds of war that are super afflicting to our service members, and especially those that are suffering physical injuries. And they have so many challenges ahead of them. And you have made it a mission to help with those challenges through the Gary Sinise Foundation. You guys are doing incredible work. In fact, one of our show producers, as she was she knew you were coming on and she was looking up, she said, "Oh my gosh, the Gary Sinise Foundation." She's the spouse of a service member in the Navy, and she said the Gary Sinise Foundation actually provided a home to one of our very best friends. So, just an awesome connection there. But tell us about the Gary Sinise Foundation. Tell us about the incredible work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. As we were talking about the importance of the nonprofits in our work that we all do and the space we're in here to help folks, that became like doing that PSA for you early on in your work. That was just part of what I was doing way back then. It was important to me to try to help as many folks as I could within the military space. And a way that I found that I could do that was by supporting these nonprofits, these military support nonprofits out there. So I was doing all kinds of support work for numerous military charities, many that you know, and they're all listed on our website of things that I supported in the past. And all that work was just a way that I could, just do more, by helping other people do more. So when it came to like, okay, well, how do I do more than that? It was, well, I'll start one of those too. I'll start my own nonprofit. It's clear that I'm in this world and I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in it. And but how much can I actually run around the country and do all these events for all these nonprofits all the time? I think I need to consolidate in some way and bring all the work that I'd been doing over the years kind of together under one umbrella and make the most of it. Yep. Because I had kind of developed a pretty good relationship with a lot of the military and a lot of the nonprofits and all of that. And I thought, well, let's make the most of that. So what did I do? I named the foundation, the Gary Sinise Foundation. Why did I do that? Well, because, why didn't I call it the Help the Troops Foundation or something? Because by the time I started my own foundation, I'd already been doing this for a number of years, going back to the 90s with the disabled American veterans. And so there was a strong trusted relationship between me and the military and between me and the people that I'd been supporting in the nonprofit space and the American people who I was asking to go support the Travis Manion Foundation or support what a Fisher House or whatever it was, raising a lot of money for those. So I developed a pretty strong, reliable relationship within the space. And I thought, let's capitalize on it. The brand is pretty good already. Let's call it the Gary Sinise Foundation, which I did. And we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary just this past June, doing awesome. A lot of good work out there.
So tell us a little bit, give us the background, because through the foundation, you have gifted several beautiful, accessible smart homes to wounded veterans. And you actually attend a lot of these homecoming ceremonies where service members go into their homes for the first time. Tell us about, number one, what made you recognize that specifically as a need, that wanted to be your line of focus? And then number two, how are those experiences for you?
Yeah, that started in 2009. Remember Brendan Morocco? Brendan was a soldier who was blown up in Iraq, and he was the first soldier to survive a quadruple amputation, both his arms and both his legs. And I saw him in the hospital in April of 2009. And then, and he's from Staten Island. And I was shooting CSI New York in New York shortly after that, not too long after that. And the commissioner of the fire department there at the time, it was Sal Casano. And I knew them because I had supported a bunch of 9/11 firefighter stuff in New York and was supporting different organizations there. And they came to me on the set and said, look, we want to build a special house for this Staten Island soldier who got blown up. He lost both his arms and both his legs. And I said, I know who you're talking about. I saw him in the hospital recently. Wow. And so I offered to do a concert to raise money. And so I brought my band, the Lieutenant Dan band, over to we did the concert at the St. George's Theater in Staten Island, and Brendan was there, and we sold it out with New Yorkers coming in to support one of their own, and we raised a whole bunch of money and built this special house. And while we were prepared to set that concert up, there was another quadruple amputee who came to the hospital. And he was a Marine guy named Todd Nicely. And Todd lost both his arms and both his legs. And so I said, well, holy cow, we're going to have to do another concert. I did another concert and we raised money to build another house. And that's how I got into it. And after I started, that was before my foundation. And then after I started the foundation, we wanted to continue that work.
Yep.
So we created a program called RISE, Restoring Independence, Supporting Empowerment, and continued building houses, hired builders who are our builders. We pay them, and they have now done, 60 or 70 houses for us in the last several years, probably the last 8 years. Wow. Or so.
And so tell us about that experience when you get to see these service members, a lot of them with families, be able to walk into their new home, accessible home for the first time. It's got to be pretty overwhelming.
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, to see that and these are mortgage-free houses, so we provide everything, and they don't have to pay for it at all. So that's a big load off the shoulders, especially if you're somebody who's very severely wounded, wondering how they're going to support their family. They got kids. They got how are they going to do it? They're living in a space that's not built for somebody with severe injuries or disabilities. So they're navigating their way through the hallways and trying to figure out how to get in the bathroom and all this stuff. It's very difficult. So all these houses are especially designed specifically for each one of these service members. So it makes their life and the life of their family so much easier to manage, in these houses that are specifically built just to accommodate their needs. That's a big stress reliever right there. And the important thing is, you have various injuries. We've got a lot of different folks. Some are in a total caregiving mode where they cannot take care of themselves.
Right.
They don't have, they've got a traumatic brain injury. They've got they suffered a stroke or whatever it is, and they are just in the caregiver's hands. So we put a lot of equipment into these houses that can make the life of the veteran and the caregivers much more manageable. And that can restore independence not only to the service member, but to those family members as well. That can be life-changing. It's just a life-changing thing, and it's beautiful to see. And what's wonderful about the program is that we have so many in-kind partners that come in and provide flooring and the roof and the plumbing and all these different things. If you look at our website and you look up our RISE program on the website, you'll see just so many different wonderful organizations and individuals and nonprofits who support us and whatnot. There's a lot that goes in, a lot of love goes into these houses. We're just about to, we have the halfway point of our home building. We do something called our walls of honor, where the frame goes up, right? And it's before you put the drywall in. Uh-huh. So you've just got the wood frame and it's sort of the halfway point. And we bring the service member in there. We bring the people that are helping to build the house. We bring the local community folks around, the neighbors, whatever. And we honor the service member and their family by allowing people that are working on the house or people that live in the neighborhood to just go up on those walls, those wood frames, and write messages.
I love it. Yeah.
And we have one coming up next week in Tennessee that we're doing. And these messages then they live in the house, and the drywall goes up, but within that house, that service member and those family members can look. They've looked at every single one of those messages that are written on the frame of that house, and it's messages of support and gratitude, appreciation, love, salute, tribute, whatever. just appreciation. And within the walls of that house is honoring that service member. And that's very important. That's like the halfway point before they actually walk into the house. I've actually, Ryan, I only attend the occasional home dedication because I just made it a practice early on to let that moment be totally about, the wounded soldier or Marine or whoever it is and their family, and the spotlight totally on them. I've gone to a few here and there, and there's videos on our website that have me in there. But generally, I'd like to go in later without all the cameras around and, without all the celebration and everything, and just let them give me a tour and then sit down and have a little meal with them and just spend some quality time and get a private tour to see what we actually have done.
I love that. We actually did something similar, through our work with Gold Star families. We do these expeditions and we take families of the fallen all across the world to do service expeditions. And a few years ago, I was with a group in Houston, and we were doing a home rebuild for a family after Harvey. And we did something very similar where all the drywall had to be ripped out, new framing had to be put in, and it was the day before the new drywall was going up, and all of these Gold Star families wrote messages. And before the drywall went up, the family that was living in that house was able to come in and read the stories of their loved ones. And they shared memories and stories about, their husbands, their sons, their daughters, their sisters, their brothers. And, what an incredible way to I think about that family who was a civilian family that had no connection to the military. And here they had 20 Gold Star family members that were, helping to muck out their house and rebuild the framing and the drywall. And they were so incredibly grateful and just overwhelmed that these people who had suffered so much were coming in to help them, right? And
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think about that family a lot, and I think, because a lot of it was primarily in their living room and kitchen on the first floor, and I think, every time they must pass by, they have to think about these notes that are written on the wood frames underneath the drywall. So I know how that, I know the meaning behind something like that. I was a part of it myself, and it's pretty awesome. I'd love to kind of dive in here quickly and just hear your thoughts. We're at a pivotal time right now. Just a little bit ago, our president declared an end to 20 years in Afghanistan and effectively an end to the wars over the last 20 years. We had the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and I know within our community, we have a lot of veterans and Gold Star family members that we want to impress upon them that no matter what, their service mattered. A lot of them are feeling confused. They're feeling a lot of things. And so I just would love to kind of get your thoughts on what we can do as a community to make sure, because what I've always said is, one of the things that's so important outside of the support and, programs that the Gary Sinise Foundation offers, the Travis Manion Foundation offers, and all of these other nonprofits, the other thing that is so incredibly important about our organizations is that we continue to shed the light on this community, this 1% that steps up and serves. And as we walk away from the conflict over the last 20 years, what does that mean to our nation, to these men and women, and what do we need to be doing to make sure that we're putting it back into the hearts and minds of the 99% that don't have that connection to the military?
Yeah. If you don't have a personal connection to somebody who's serving, either a friend or a family member, you're kind of disconnected to it. Yeah. I found that as a public figure, one of the ways that I could be of service was by exactly that, shining a light and drawing attention and creating awareness and telling stories of the people that I would interact with within the military community, the hospitals, the war zones, wherever. I would always try to find a way to describe and to tell the American people and the public, some who knew and some who don't know what military life is like, what our service members are actually doing out there. Having been to the war zones and walk those areas with our troops and everything, seeing them serving honorably, and it was always a motivating factor for me to come back and try to make sure the American people don't forget. Just don't forget. Somebody's out there, whether they're on the front page or not. They're out there and they're serving. And it's a particularly difficult time right now, having 20 years go by, and the Taliban is in power again after 20 years. Difficult for our service members to kind of digest and process. Certainly many of them are questioning what they did and why they did it. But at the same time, there was so much that happened there for the people, and so much that happened in Afghanistan to prevent anything from happening here again, that we should never lose sight of that. I remember one of my trips, Ryan, and I was in Afghanistan, and I walked through one of our hospitals. It was kind of just makeshift hospital, and our doctors had just come out of a brain surgery in one of these makeshift hospitals, where they operated on a young girl who the Russians left a lot of weaponry there, right? When they left, and they left they had these mines that were designed to sort of look like toys. And they were all over the country. And so a young child seeing one of those things thinks it's a toy. And this young girl had, blown up, and our doctors were operating on her brain. And I walked in right after they got done doing this, and they saved this young Afghan girl's life. So should that service member, who is a military doctor, look at what happened in just the last couple of weeks and say, my service didn't matter?
Right.
Of course his service mattered. It mattered to that family that he saved that young girl's life. And there are countless stories like that, where just the human being to human being contact and support mattered and made a difference, in somebody's life. And of course, we know that schools were built, and millions of Afghan women and girls got to go to school that they wouldn't have experienced in the last 20 years. What has happened, with our leadership and the way this whole thing happened, that's something that is really out of the control of the service member. Right. When you volunteer to serve our country, you go where they tell you, and you do your duty, and you do your job.
I had actually just posted on my Instagram the other day. I had found a quote from Travis when he was on his first deployment to Iraq. He was interviewed by the Philadelphia Inquirer while in country. They had called him, and they were asking him questions around, what was happening there. And I'll paraphrase, but he said something along the lines of, I don't think that the average American sees the incredible things that are happening over here every day from our servicemen and women. And, at the end of the day, these servicemen and women will act on whatever our leadership decides. They're here and they're ready to take on the mission that is set forth by our leadership. And so, these little pieces of humanity, these stories that you share, I think that's what our general public doesn't get to see. And that's why it's very hard for them to conceptualize what was happening over there the last 20 years, right? They looked at it as this endless war, where in fact it was keeping the enemy from our door right here at home, and it was continuing to provide that safety and support to our Afghans and our Afghan allies. And so I feel a personal responsibility to make sure that every veteran that I'm speaking to, every Gold Star family I come into contact with, I let them know how much their service mattered. Let these families know that their loved one's service, though they didn't make it back, was not in vain. I think it becomes a personal responsibility for all of us within this community to make sure that we're leading that charge, especially.
Well, I know you know this already, but that makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. I've seen it too many times. I mean, just that little pat on the back, can make a big difference. It can change somebody's day for the better.
Yeah.
And you never know, when you see somebody in uniform, what kind of day they've been having. Maybe they just lost 10 friends, and they're walking through the airport like, dealing with that, and somebody coming up and patting them on the back and giving them a hug and saying, I appreciate what you do, and I don't take it for granted. That can turn their life in a different direction that day, and it could be very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think that other Americans could learn from our military? If there was one thing that you, over the course of the years and the work that you've done within this community, if there's one thing that you wish the average American knew, I know there's so many, but if you could dial down on one thing, what would that be?
Well, teamwork,
Yeah.
because I mean, well, within the military, you're only as good as the guy over here or the gal over here, the people around you. And that's something that's very, very impressive, look, people in the military, there's some people that are really good, really honorable. There's some people that are not. They're human beings.
Like every other group in the world, right?
They're human beings.
Right.
But one thing that they're really, really taught, is to work as a unit, and that's important, and that can apply to any business, that you're trying to create, or team sport or anything like that. I've always been very, very impressed in the places that I've been allowed to go, and being embraced by the military community, and the things I've been allowed to see, and the people I've met, just extraordinary people that inspire me and motivate me, and have really, really impressed me, and that I've learned a great deal from. I mean, I suppose if years ago I would have had some bad experiences supporting the military, maybe I wouldn't have kept going. But I just had nothing but, I saw the positive impact that you can make by just showing up, and I saw what they did, and I was impressed by it, and they allowed me to see more. And so the one way that I could serve was going out there and going on television and telling people what I was witnessing as a civilian, who was allowed into the military community. So very, very impressive group of folks that I've had the opportunity to meet.
Well, certainly I was looking through kind of, you have a lot of honorary, I don't want to say it's not all degrees, but you're an honorary Marine, you're an honorary, there was a laundry list I was looking through. I pointed out, and I wanted to point out to you that you and I are both honorary graduates of the United States Naval Academy. So I was in 2017, I was bestowed that honor, and no matter what, I don't care if they ask me for a bio that has 2 sentences. I always say, no matter what, I want that in that bio, because I'm so very proud of that distinction. And I saw that you were an honorary graduate for the class of 2020. So
I never went to college, so I was very happy to get that honorary degree.
There you go. Well, Gary, I'm going to finish it up with our last question. But before I do, I want to thank you because, again, going all the way back to our loss in 2007, it was really important for us to know that there were people, not just, Travis's friends that he served in the Marine Corps with, or his friends from the Naval Academy, or, my dad's friends. We were part of a military community. So we were embraced by our own friends and family when we lost my brother. But it was individuals like you that stepped outside and stepped into a community that you weren't connected with by your own service, and made it a mission to make sure and bring light to these voices, to these stories of service. And so I'm incredibly grateful for all that you do, all that you continue to do, and all that I know you will do in the future. I want to close it out with the last question I ask everyone who's a guest on the Resilient Life podcast, and that is, what does living a resilient life look like for you?
Well, there's a chapter in my book. I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Grateful American, and I didn't know what I was going to call the book when I started, but as I was writing, these themes of gratitude and appreciation just kept kind of coming out, and this chapter in the book is called Turning Point, and it is the September 11th chapter. And I write about a lot of things that happened prior to that, but I do point to that awful day 20 years ago as a time where my heart was just breaking, and I needed something. I needed to find a way to help, and I found that service to others made me heal, and service can be a great healer, because we all have heartbreak and we all have challenges, and people face cancer and people lose people, and bad things happen to human beings, but what makes that, where is that resilient part of ourselves that we can pull ourselves up? And it usually has something to do with taking care of somebody else, reaching out and touching somebody else that is maybe having a worse day than you are, or that needs real support. And I found that, a way that I could kind of find that resilient part of myself to carry on and to go forward during times of real challenge. And I write about them in some of those in my book, was reaching out and touching somebody else. And I've found now I've been involved in it so much, and I can't imagine life without that aspect of it. It just, I've had a great career. I've been blessed with acting and making money and doing movies and, all these things. We have heartbreak and real serious challenge within our family. But to have this foundation that is reaching out and touching people every single day and changing their lives, helping to improve their lives, helping to turn a negative into a positive, that gives me a lot of hope and carries me forward. So I always tell people service is a great healer. When joy, there's a line in my book, I think it's when joy connects to mission, a life's purpose begins to take shape. And that is truly very, very accurate, because I get a lot of joy out of that. I've been blessed in my life, and I get a lot of joy out of putting my hands on somebody else. We have a lot of Gold Star families within our community that we serve and everything, and just embracing those kids and trying to lift them up, and seeing a wounded service member get a house, or whatever it is that we're doing. Firefighters are battling blazes all over, and we're giving them food, whatever it is. It's helping somebody else. Service is a great healer, and it can keep that resilient spirit going, within you to do a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our early mottos at the foundation with the work we did with Gold Stars was honor the fallen by challenging the living. And that was really what we tried to do. Just, to the best way to honor your loved one and to work through and is to be in service to others, to challenge yourself to do more. And we have found that a great healer, a great way to be resilient, to grasp onto that post-traumatic growth as they're dealing with the challenges and their life's changes. So
that's exactly what you've done, is taken the terrible, terrible heartbreak of losing Travis and saying, well, how do we process this? What are we going to do? And we're going to start something in his name that is going to carry his spirit forward. He was a person who signed up to serve his country. You have to be there has to be this honorable sort of service aspect in your being when you do that. It's a dangerous job. And he gave his life for his country, and you've taken that and you have turned his legacy into something that's helping a lot of people. And I commend you for that.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today. For everyone out there, if you haven't seen Forrest Gump, go see it. If you haven't seen it in a while, go watch it again. If you have kids, introduce them to the movie and the story. Pick up the book, Grateful American, and learn more about the Gary Sinise Foundation. We will put the link to the foundation on our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us on the Resilient Life podcast. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Gary, thank you so much.
God bless, Ryan. Thank you for having me.